Biblegateway.com is a great resource to look up Bible passages, to do some basic study of different key words or topics. Some of you are familiar with how to use Bible Gateway already, but just in case, I want to show you a few things that this website has to offer. So the first thing is, you can notice up here, if you click underneath Bible, you can look up a passage here if you already know what the passage is. You can look up based on keywords. You can also look up by topics. So if you're studying the topic of prayer, you might type topic and you can search that here. Otherwise, you can simply go right here and you can either enter a keyword, a passage, or a particular topic. So let's say we want to look at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Now, if I don't know where that is, I might simply type in Sermon on the Mount, and I want to use the NIV, the New International Version. That's the most common version. But if you click on that, you can also choose a whole bunch of other Bible translations. And these are all the different English translations. There are other languages present. But for most of us, we're going to use English translations, and we're going to keep it with the NIV. There are times, however, where you're going to want to compare a Bible passage with a different translation, like let's say the Message translation or the New English translation. But for now, we're going to look at the NIV. So Sermon on the Mount, NIV, and I hit search. And it's going to show me a couple results for this passage. And I see here Matthew 5 through 7, the full chapter, Introduction to the Sermon on the Mount. So I can click on that, and that will now take me to the entire Sermon on the Mount. And it's going to show me all of Matthew 5 through 7. If I were to scroll down, I would see all of that. Now, if I wanted to compare this translation with a different translation, that's a really helpful study tool because it allows us to look at how different translators take one text and translate it in a different way. So here we are, we're looking at the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So we have this in the NIV, and I can now click on this, and I get a drop down, and all the English translations are listed here in alphabetical order. And so I'm going to look at this in the Message. So if I click on that, it's automatically going to update, and now I can see that this is now Matthew 5 through 7 in the Message. And you can see that this translation is pretty different than the previous one. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and His rule. It's an interesting difference. So we can look at a passage based on typing a passage in. Let me go back to my home page. So there I typed in Sermon on the Mount, and it brought me right there because I didn't know where that was. I'm going to move this back to the NIV. There it is. Now let's say I want to look at a passage, but I just want one verse, and I happen to know what that verse is. And I know that's Romans chapter 12, verse 1, and I want to look that up. And so I can put that in exactly, hit search, and now it will simply only show me that one verse. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. So that might be helpful. However, it's often better to know the verse in context. So I looked for that one verse. I can click on this little button here. So Romans 12, verse 1. This little button here. Click on that, and it puts it now in the full chapter. So I have 12 verse 1, but now I get everything that's before this. Or, sorry, after this. One other thing just to point out, again, I could change the version that I'm looking at. Let's go back to the Message, see what that says. Update it here. If I update it up here, I had to hit search again. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. So So again, sometimes it's nice to hear how different translations put this. But I also can click on this, and this takes me to
life before God.
Audio version.
Chapter 12. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life. You're sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking.
So I show that to you because it might be helpful. You find a passage and you need to do some reading of this text. And you might be preoccupied with other things. You might simply want to listen to it rather than read it on the text. You might want to listen to that as well. So Biblegateway.com is a really helpful place to go to look up Bible passages. One other thing I would want to highlight, move this back to the NIV, hit search again, is you can go here and there are study tools, and you can go down to more resources. And more resources are going to include other things like commentaries, dictionaries, and other study tools. So if I were to go to a commentary, this shows a whole bunch of commentaries. Some of them are better than others, but let's just look on this one. And this is book by book, and section by section. So I'm looking for Romans. And Romans, let's see if they have Romans. Looks like they might not even have Romans in this particular commentary. So I'm going to have to go to a different commentary. Back up. Let's see if the Reformation Study Bible has something on Romans. So Romans. But now I have to go by chapter and verse. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to chapter 12. Verse 1, and it gives me some ideas about what this passage is all about. Biblegateway.com, a great place to go to look for verses, to do some study. So I hope you found this helpful, and you can use this in your own study.